Hi, and welcome to the channel Creative Nörds. Why nerds? Because I'm a camera nerd, and hopefully if you're watching this, so are you. And you know what? So are a few of my friends. And what is more fun for camera nerds than doing a mega camera shootout test? So we gathered every camera that we could possibly get our hands on, and thankfully my friend Carl was kind enough to loan me the Arri Alexa Mini with an Arri Master Prime 40mm t1.3. We then used the Zeiss Milvus 35mm 1.4 that is on the C200 that we're shooting on right now. And then we tested it on a bunch of different cameras, including the Red Epic Dragon, the Canon C200, C70, R5C, the Panasonic S1, S5 Mark II, the Sony A7 IV, the Pocket 6K, and even the C-Cam S6. We shot all these cameras in RAW except for the Sony, and if you guys could help me out and reach 1500 subscribers, I would gladly release those RAW files, and I will link them in the description below. After we sort of taken a look at this test, I will give you guys my 2 cents in the end of what I thought, and also some comments from my friend who were at the shoot and then who got to look at the material beforehand. So without further ado, here is the test. Enjoy. Alright, so we start this test off strong with the benchmark, the industry standard in the cine world, the Arri Alexa Mini, sporting an Arri Master Prime 40mm t1.3. just to set a really high benchmark for this test so that we had something to compare the other cameras to. And not to be outdone, we're still in proper cine camera territory here with Red Epic Dragon's 6K, sporting that infamous 6K Dragon sensor. And I think this camera has the organic look of a cine camera. It has great tonal separation, and it really does give the Alexa Mini a run for its money. Now moving on into the mirrorless world, we start off strong with the Panasonic S1. We also had an S5 Mark II in the studio, but since the S1 had the RAW upgrade, we opted to shoot with that one, since those sensors are basically interchangeable, and that is coming from somebody who owned those two cameras basically since they launched. So I think we're getting skin tones, as far as I'm concerned, is pretty much bang on where I want them to be. We have a nice image out of the box, and we do get really good tonal separation in the skin tones. Now moving on into Canon land, and starting off with the R5C here, shooting 8K RAW. This is by far the most detailed sensor you will get in this test. Even though we had some 6K cameras, I still think we're getting a more detailed image on the R5C, and those Canon colors are looking pretty darn good. I will say that they are probably, we get just a tad bit less tonal separation in the skin tones, but still great looking skin tones and a great looking modern image coming out of the R5C. Now we are looking at the Sony A7 IV, and this for me was probably the most disappointing camera in the test, just because I had so high expectations, being a Sony A7 IV owner for well over a year. That camera produces some spectacular images when you shoot it in RAW, and you can get that camera almost up to Venice territory. So Now, I will give the A7 IV the benefit of the doubt, since this was the only camera that we shot in compressed format, but still, I think we're getting certainly a flatter looking image, especially compared to the cine cameras. And speaking of disappointing, the Pocket 6K, now granted this might have come down to user error on our part, since this was the only camera that none of us actually owned, but I think we overexposed it by a stop. But through the magic and power of RAW and B-RAW, we were able to get a very decent looking image back. But what I feel that the Pocket 6K lacks more than probably any other camera in this test, maybe with the exception of the C200, is that organic feel in the image that you get from certainly the higher end cine cameras and the C70 as well. And now we get back into Canon land and the C70, and I think this is one of the cameras with the image that has the greatest potential of landing you closer to the cine cameras. We get that modern, cleaner image that you get from the new mirrorless cameras, but you get that dynamic range with the DGO sensor that I think sets the C70 apart from the other mirrorless cameras in this range, and certainly like the sub-cine cameras for sure. Really pleasing Canon color science, good looking skin tones. I maybe prefer the Panasonic, but certainly not by much. Now moving on to the Canon C200, and this for me is a very, very interesting camera right now in the marketplace, because you can pick one up used for like 1,500 euros, and I think this really intercuts well color science wise and almost dynamic range wise with the C70, especially when you expose this properly, which is really, really interesting. And I think this test sort of proves that we got the Alexa Mini, we got the Red Epic Dragon, both 10-year-old camera, and this is now becoming a 7-year-old camera, the C200, and they still produce modern looking images, and certainly the cine cameras look absolutely spectacular still. So yeah, interesting stuff. Now moving on to the C-Cam, and I never used the C-Cam before, and this camera surprised me in so many ways, because skin tone wise, I think we're sort of in Panasonic land here. We got those sort of browner-ish skin tones, which I really like. Maybe just a tad bit less tonal separation in the skin tones, but certainly for a certain look, I would maybe look to the C-Cam, especially when you're doing sort of vintagey look stuff. This certainly has an interesting image for sure. Alright you guys, that is it for this test. I really hope you enjoyed it. I hope you subscribe to the channel so that we get those raw files out to you guys. And I just want to thank my friends so much for showing up, helping me with this test. Do check out Viktors YouTube channel, check out Hugo's and Rickard's Instagrams, and I also want to thank Carl for letting us use his Alexa Mini. That was really super for the test to get such a great benchmark. Now, what are my conclusions? Well, basically everybody who's seen the material and was at the test did the same conclusion. Almost every camera looks great, and we're really spoiled for choice, which makes the discussion of image quality sort of mute, at least for us who are working professionally. What we concluded is that workflow and the workflow that the camera provides is much more important than the image quality, because we get so great image quality. And even for national television that I've delivered from in both comedy shows and commercials, still a 2K workflow. So a camera like the C200 or the C70 shooting in 4K is plenty. And what we will do is we will have a separate video where we have a panel discussion with everybody that was at the test, and we will sort of discuss more what we think is a good camera for what kind of person and their workflow. But that is it for this test, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you know what to do. Give it a thumbs up, and again, consider subscribing to the channel, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.